So I've seen this claim a lot. Persona as a series is almost 30 years old, yet it only has 6 mainline titles. A lot of other series that are younger than this have a lot more titles under their belt. And I think in more recent years, I've seen people put a lot of blame on the spin-off games for essentially delaying the future installments of the series. So I think it's appropriate to ask, are the spin-offs the reason Persona 6 is not out? It's honestly easy to see why people would think this, especially if you don't follow game development that closely, which I assume there are a lot of people who do, and there are a lot of people who don't. The Persona spin-off games are still Persona titles, so it stands to believe that they would be developed by the same team who developed the main game. So for example, one might assume that Persona 5's development team has developed every single existing Persona 5 spin-off. On the surface level, this tracks. I think the logic is sound for that assumption. Again, if I didn't look further into game development, then I'd be inclined to believe this too. But let's take a little bit of a closer look at this. So the Persona games we've gotten since the release of vanilla Persona 5 are Persona 5 Dancing in Starlight, Persona Q2, Persona 5 Royal, Persona 5 Strikers, and we have Persona 5 Tactica by year's end, assuming nothing happens. You could also include Persona 3 Dancing in Moonlight and Persona 3 Reload, as they are being developed by P Studios, and they are Persona titles as well. So focusing down on Dancing, that game was developed between 2015 and 2018, basically after P4 Dancing got a lot of positive feedback. The game features some similar staff between this and Persona 5. Obviously, the major figures involved were still part of this team. It's still developed under Atlus's Persona studio, P Studios. We will be referring to this studio a lot, so keep that name in mind. However, it being made alongside P5 for a while, there either have to have been different teams within P Studios, or there was really good organization where you could move people back and forth between the two, which I don't think is very likely personally, but who knows. Now, PQ2 is another spin-off project that was developed by P Studios. However, a lot of the staff on the project, at least the big names, are different from the other two Persona 5 games that were being developed at this time. This is probably the team from Persona Q. Development for this began right after Atlus finished P5, and the game released at the end of 2018, spending about 2 years in development. 3 for English, however, with English games, a lot of it is translation and localization, especially since this game did not have an English dub. At this point, I think it's important to note that it is very possible P Studios is not just one team. It hasn't been explicitly stated as far as I've seen, but there are a lot of games in development at the same time. While the bigger names and bigger creatives are featured under multiple titles, it's entirely possible that there are different internal teams of development staff who assisted on different projects. This could probably be figured out by scanning the credits of each game, so maybe I'll do that one of these days. But this is kind of par for the course for a lot of game development. There are usually multiple different teams working on different projects all at the same time. Now I know P5R is not a spin-off, but an enhanced version of the original game, so I'll say that the staff on Royal is mostly similar to P5, but the development team for Royal content was likely smaller. Major staff also seems to have some new faces assisting with the creation of Royal's content, especially considering Hashino had departed from P Studios to form Studio Zero and create ReFantasia. Regardless, it's clear to me that P Studios probably has several teams underneath it, given that at some point it's likely Persona 5 Dancing, PQ2, and P5R were all in development at the same time. Now, shortly after Royal's release in Japan, Strikers came out, this being the most ambitious spin-off of the bunch. This game, however, was not developed in-house. Instead, while P Studios provided some support, Koei Tecmo was responsible for the development. This game probably started development roughly after P5's release, and was released in 2020. Since all of the major development for this game was done out of house, I assume that means that this game did not have any major impacts on the development of other Persona titles during the time it was being developed. Now we've covered basic development for all existing spin-offs. That, of course, barring Tactica and then Persona 3 Reload. Tactica, as far as we know, is being made by P Studios, and so is P3R. But since we don't have a ton of development details or staff, the takeaway I want to give here is that it's evident that P Studios has been busy. So in truth, is it possible that the spin-offs are holding back Persona 6?
We can't afford to waste time on this shit!
Atlus knows the power that the casts of the modern Persona games have. Persona 6 is almost definitely not done being developed yet. I know I've talked about this a lot, but I think I have to throw this in here. If anything, it's fairly likely that Persona 6 is deep in development and just not ready to be shown yet. Atlus is not a company that can afford to keep games on the shelf until they want to ship them out. In fact, most companies do not do that. People seem to overlook or forget that Atlus really isn't a big company raking in crazy earnings from their games. A majority of their major releases don't reach super high numbers. Persona 5 is the first time in recent history that the number of eyes on Atlus is extremely high, comparatively at least. P5 reached unprecedented levels of success for Atlus. There's collaborations with the game all over the place. Gacha games, bubble tea, cafes, mouthwash, perfumes, and the Phantom Thieves even got a spot in the biggest crossover in gaming. Wait, not that one. It stands to reason, at least to me, that Atlus is pulling out all the stops for Persona 6. The series not only has a ton of new fans, but is likely headed in a brand new direction, given that Hashino is not leading the next entry for the first time in over a decade. I think there's a lot of pressure to create something great and amazing. And sure, I've talked about this a lot, as I said before, but the time spent on Persona 6, assuming its development began either in 2016 or 2019, is immense. This is one of those games that will probably be a major milestone in the series' success. If it fails to deliver as hard as Persona 5 did, then the future for Atlus might look very different.
At
least say something!
So to be clear, no, the spin-offs are not delaying Persona 6, nor are they holding it back. More specifically, yes, it is possible that Persona 6 did not get a lot of major development done for a while after P5, but it's very difficult to determine that. We don't have a lot to go off of. We don't know how big each subsection at Atlus is, nor do we know how many teams and divisions exist within P Studios. We'll probably only get a bigger picture a few months to a year after Persona 6 is announced and released. For me personally though, and I guess to address the claim of the spin-offs holding back Persona 6 a little bit more, I think that yes, it is possible that Atlus planned Persona 6 to launch way out. And I can understand why people are impatient or want this game to come out sooner. I get why people are tired of Persona 5 spin-offs and Persona spin-offs in general. However, I don't doubt that Atlus is putting a lot of work into P6. I don't want them to announce the game or show the game before it's ready to release, which is why I personally choose to believe that the spin-offs have nothing to do with Persona 6 and its launch window. I think Atlus knows that they can come back to Persona 5's cast and people will eat that up. They can go back to Persona 4, which they haven't done in almost 10 years, and people will eat that up. They're going back to Persona 3, and people, again, are eating that up, whether it's new fans or old ones. But to get to my main point, and to put a little bit of attention off the spin-offs, Persona is being developed by Atlus, a company that is not that large. They haven't had a lot of eyes on them for that long. They kind of need this game to succeed. If it takes 5 years, if it takes 10, I just want to see what they want to show us when it's ready. But remember, all of these claims are just my opinions. While I've used a lot of information to try and deduce my claims, it's entirely possible that I'm just wrong. It's possible that Atlus is shelving Persona 6 and it's ready to go and they just haven't announced it. It's possible that they are making spin-off titles to push that back, and they're not going to release Persona 6 until spin-offs are done. All of these things are possible, but I personally believe that they are unlikely. So let me know what you think about spin-offs' effects on Persona 6 in the comments down below. As always, you can leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to the channel for more things Persona, Atlus, and JRPG related. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Oh,
Back in levels. Get another spell.